Hello everybody, welcome back to the fourth part of our Meng 1/35th scale Apache build. I'm hoping that this is going to be a pretty short video because all I'm going to be doing in it is fitting this canopy to the cockpit, and I'm going to spend that time and dedicate the video to it because, well, for two reasons really. The first one is that it's a really key part of the build. It's an important feature of the helicopter. It's something that the eye is drawn to, so I want to get it right for that reason. But secondly, it's the one area that, if you look at the build reviews, people have had trouble with getting the canopy to fit properly. Now, I've done plenty of test fitting on this, and I think I've isolated what the problem is. So hopefully we'll be able to go through that in the video and get this fitted successfully. So the problem part of the fit that's been reported is that when positioned, the canopy doesn't really sit down enough. It's difficult to get it to sit, particularly here at the back. And what's causing that is this intermediate armoured screen. So this is a part that fits on top of the central coaming like that, and the tolerances on the kit are very tight, so if that's not located fully down on the coaming, it holds up the canopy and it means that you can't locate it properly, and that's what's causing the canopy to lift, particularly at the back here, and prevent this location point fitting properly. So there's a couple of things that we can do about that. The first one is to make sure that this slot in the coaming is completely clean and clear. And what I've also done is just narrowed this tab here, so that makes sure that it goes fully down into its slot. So that can't go any further. Now what you could do to make that sit down a little more is just very gently file the bottom of the transparency. It goes into a groove in the coaming, so it's not really as risky as it looks. But anything that we can gain from just lowering this down a little bit is all to the good. So just 0.5 millimetre will help. But obviously this is a pretty risky manoeuvre, so it's not something that you can take on lightly really. So that's just pinching fractions of a millimetre, but it all helps in getting the canopy down sufficiently. Now the other problem area that I've identified is this little tab here, which you might be able to see, which I found a little bit too wide, so that was making it difficult to get the canopy to sit down on the fuselage side. So I've just narrowed that a little bit, and now it slots into its groove a bit better. And at this point, this fitting at the top is completely flush with the top of the fuselage, so that's a good sign that that's as good as we're going to get it. Now even with all that, there's still a very small gap at the back, just here on this corner, but it's small enough now to be able to fill that with just a smear of canopy glue when we come to fit the canopy permanently. So what I'd recommend if you're building the kit is just to test fit everything as you go along. As I said, it's a key part of the build. Visually it's very important, so it's worth test fitting it and getting it right. Now the next step is to mask off the interior of this canopy, and then we can paint it black. There's a number of parts to fit onto the inside, rails and so on. We'll do that once the basic black is on. Before applying those masks though, I just want to give the canopy a bit of a wipe down, and I'm using some Tamiya modelling wax for this. It's really good stuff. Unfortunately it's not readily available in the UK. I get this from Europe. I'm not sure what it is, but there must be something either in the formulation or the instructions that don't meet UK regulations, so you've got to get it in from abroad. Comes with its own very soft cloth, so you're not going to do any damage to the canopy by polishing it. And it does go a long way, this stuff. You don't need very much. Now I will mask inside and out at this stage. So these are the instructions for the masking, and these are the masks themselves. The slight possible problem here is that these masks aren't numbered. So I'm just trusting that the internal and external masks are exactly the same size. That's not always the case when you've got internal and external masks. So obviously we just need to be careful as we're applying these that they are going to go. Okay, so I can tell you that these masks are different internally and externally. The first one that I applied was too small for the external, so it's a bit of a misstep from Meng not to number these masks. That's a good step to get to when the canopies are all protected like that. So I just want to work out the parts that I've got to fit to the interior, because I want to paint them at the same time as doing the interior black. Now this part is given as a transparency, so I'm assuming it's a piece of optical equipment of some sort. So I'm going to mask off the front face of that with a little circle mask. These are ready cut, come in various sizes. Now it might be possible to fit these parts onto the inside of the canopy and then just paint the whole thing black, but I'm imagining that it'd be quite difficult to get in with the airbrush to get good coverage of these, so I'm going to do them off the sprue, paint them up and then fit them once everything's painted. Okay, so we're ready to go with some paint. I'll get over to the spray booth and give these an overall coat of Tamiya NATO Black. Okay, so we need to do some assembly, and originally my intention was to fit this armoured screen and then drop the cockpit canopy on top of it, as you've seen in the test fits that I did earlier on. But I've just realised when I've read the instructions more carefully that these internal frames fit onto the screen rather than onto the canopy. So I'm going to have to build it as Meng tell you to do, which is to fit the screen onto the canopy first and then drop the whole assembly onto the rest of the fuselage. Which is a shame. I just felt it would be easier to get this screen located first, make sure it was fully located and then drop the canopy on. There is some internal detail on the canopy on the inside, and I'll just bring that out with a little bit of dry brushing. This is Tamiya dark grey. Okay, so let's get this screen fitted. So I'm just going to scrape away the paint from the connection points on the canopy. Got 3 tabs that slot into these grooves that I'm clearing out. Okay, one last brush down and we'll try and get this canopy fitted. Now I found that the trick with this is to tuck the front of the windscreen in first, because that's got like a bevel on it, and if you don't get that in first it's very difficult to locate the rest of the canopy. This is a burner clamp, and it's really useful for clamping sort of awkward shapes really. These are rubber feet and it's completely flexible with this rod at the back. So they're really useful. I've got a couple of these, and when no other clamp will do, this usually does the job. The one thing you've got to be careful with, I suppose with any clamping and then gluing, is not to get the glue onto the clamp, otherwise it'll wick underneath and you'll ruin the part. So just a nice gentle touch onto the join, that's all you need. And even though this is quick setting cement, Tamiya quick setting, I'm going to leave that for a couple of hours just to make sure it's completely gone off before I remove the clamp, and then we'll fill this very fine gap along the bottom. Okay, so let's use some of this canopy glue just to fill this very fine gap along the bottom of the canopy. So obviously this is filling the gap, and it also makes sure that we don't get any creep of any paint underneath. You don't want to be doing any sanding on this part of the model because there's so many fine rivet details that you'd lose them if you put sandpaper anywhere near them. Now the other thing that you might notice here, another little hack to get this canopy on, is I've put a piece of styrene, strip of styrene underneath the glazing. And what that does is just gives us a glue surface. So rather than gluing the bottom here where there's that little bit of a gap so you're not going to get any glue in it, this acts as a kind of a glue strip really. So it holds the canopy down onto the side of the cockpit. So obviously you've got to get this exactly the right thickness, this strip. Otherwise, if it's too thick or thin, you're going to have a step one way or another between the glazing and the fuselage side. So I just experimented with that. In the end, I started with a 0.2mm strip in here and just sanded it down until I got the correct thickness. So it's somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2. So that's all good. We'll let that PVA dry. So the next job is to put some black on this outer glazing, and that's just to make sure that all we can see through the interior is black on the inside. any little mismatch between the inner and outer masks will show as the external camouflage colour on the inside, which we don't want. So a coat of black will sort that out. Right, so we've applied the black onto this canopy, followed up by another coat of the Mr. Surfacer mahogany primer. So that's just balanced up the whole airframe again, ready for the top coats. I'm really happy with the seam around the canopy. It's a nice fit now, and I confess I've just lifted the edges of the masks around these large panels here. I was just a little bit concerned about any glue leak on the bottom here. The glazing is very close to the join, and in fact here up at the top the glazing goes right to the edge of the part. So I just lifted those just to make sure that they're okay, and I'm happy to say that they are. So that's ready for the top coats. So as I said, this is just a short episode to get this important step of the Apache out of the way, and I'm glad it's done. It's a big tripping point on the kit if you don't get it right. So I'll be putting the fuselage away next time and concentrating on building the engine, at least one of the engines. I'm going to be displaying the engine open on the starboard side here. I'll just close the engine cowling on the port side, but I'll do both of those in the next episode. We'll be doing a bit of extra detailing on the starboard engine, so I'm looking forward to doing that. And as I said, that'll be coming up in part 5. So hopefully, if you're building the Meng kit in its many forms, I hope that video has been useful to you. As I said, it's a big stumbling block in the kit if you don't get this canopy right. So I'll leave it there, everybody, and hopefully you'll join me for the next episode. In the meantime, look after yourselves, enjoy your modelling, especially if you're making this kit. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.